I arrived at the church in a suit that felt like armor, and a tie that tightened with every step. Spring light poured across the stone steps like some benevolent blessing, but my palms were damp, and my jaw locked into the familiar clench I wear when there are photographers within a 2-mile radius. It wasn't the cameras this time. It was family. "Alexander." My mother said my name like a verdict. Pearls at her throat, smile glazed, eyes sharp. "Where is she?" "Nice to see you too," I answered, which bought me exactly half a second. "You promised," my sister hissed, appearing behind my mother in a blur of lace and baby's breath. She was glowing the way people glow when they still believe love won't ask for collateral. "This wedding is important." "It's your wedding, Leah," I said. "Of course it's important. Not just to me." My father stood off to the side, hands linked behind his back, the posture that means he's pretending he isn't involved. The Barlow family, the Parson investors, the press. Investors came to the ceremony? I almost laughed. "That's festive. Investors see everything," he said. "And they talk." My Aunt Nadine drifted over like a perfume cloud. "You'll break your grandmother's heart if you walk in here alone. Again." She pressed a hand to her chest, finding the exact piano key of guilt she's played since I was 10. "People already whisper you're married to your company." The whispers of signatures. Cold. Unlovable. Designed for the boardroom, not the bedroom. I could list them the way you list quarterly metrics. I could also say none of it matters, but the words would taste like old tin. I remember precisely what it felt like to be loved, and precisely how it felt when love was yanked out like a power cord midwinter. I have learned to function in the dark. "Alex," my sister said softly, using the name that belonged to us before money complicated the alphabet. "You know how they are. If you walk in alone, they'll make the story about you, and I can't fight your ghosts and throw a bouquet in the same night." The doors to the nave opened and closed while we stood there, catching fragments of organ music and laughter. It should have been simple to say no. I run a company that can pivot 3 divisions in a week. I should be able to pivot my own life by telling 4 people to mind their business. But something in me is wired to pick up burdens no one asked me to carry. I looked at Leah, at the small tremble of excitement in her mouth, and I felt something loosen I didn't know was clenched. "What exactly do you want?" I asked, which is the mistake they were waiting for. "A girlfriend," my mother said crisply. "A fiancée would be better." Aunt Nadine beamed. "Temporary, darling. For optics. Just for tonight. A date who holds your arm and looks at you like you invented sunlight. We booked the best photographer. Imagine how that will read." How it will read. That's our family catechism. Weddings are for love but also for narratives, alliances, a constellation of pictures that will be printed and framed and deployed like tiny ambassadors for the rest of our lives. I exhaled through my teeth, and it sounded like surrender. "Fine," I said. "Find someone." My mother's phone was already in her hand before the word landed. "Already arranged," she said, triumphant. "I contacted a professional agency. They provide discreet companions for events like this, actresses, trained to play the part. She'll meet you in the side corridor 10 minutes before you walk in." "The side corridor?" I repeated. "It's discreet," Father said. "And we don't have time for you to screen candidates." "Am I adopting a puppy?" I asked. "There should be a trial period." "Stop," Leah said, grinning despite herself. "Please. For me." That was the end of it. The organ swelled into a rehearsal of the processional, bells catching the light above the courtyard like living things. My mother gave my suit a quick surgical straightening. "So handsome," she said, and then, lower, with something like relief, "So human." They dispersed, each to their assigned role. I stood alone a moment longer, watching an early summer wind lift the petals in the fountain, and thought about the quiet promises I made to myself after everything fell apart. No more pretending. No more borrowed feelings. No more letting my life be a set piece for someone else's legend. Then I turned toward the side corridor anyway. The hallway smelled like wax and old wood, the scent of every obligation I've ever met on time. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "I'm here." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Somewhere behind the wall, my sister laughed. Someone clinked a glass. In 8 minutes, I would walk into the light with a stranger on my arm and gift the world the story it demanded. I slid the phone into my pocket, squared my shoulders, and told myself what I always tell myself before stepping on stage in any theater life builds. Deliver the performance. Guard the heart. Endure the applause. The side corridor was empty except for a pew abandoned to the wall, and a vase of hydrangeas losing the argument with gravity. I paced once, twice, the organ warming up beyond the doors like a patient animal. Footsteps clicked around the bend. I looked up. Every cell in my body misfired. Emma! Her name left my mouth the way a secret slips when you're feverish. She stopped short. The light from a stained glass window printed an orchard across her dress, blue and green fruit rolling down silk. She'd pinned her hair in a way I hadn't seen before, softer at the temples. Same eyes, though. Storm glass. Same mouth that used to ruin me by saying my name like it belonged to us. Alexander! No question, no surprise, just a contained explosion. She took one breath like she'd trained for it. "They didn't tell me it was you. They didn't tell me it was you," I answered, which was technically true and emotionally useless. The church clock exhaled a single, indifferent chime. From down the hall, a coordinator in mauve sprinted past, headset crooked. 2 minutes, she chirped to the air, then vanished like a hummingbird. The air tasted of candle smoke and polish. My phone lit with messages stacking like verdicts. "Mother, where are you?" "Leah, you promised." "You okay?" "Unknown. Ready when you are." Emma glanced at my phone as if it might confess on my behalf. Then her gaze climbed back to my face, searching for the version of me she knew, the one who laughed with his shoes off on a kitchen tile floor and once slept through a thunderstorm because her shoulder convinced him the world was already safe. I kept still. It's what I learned to do after she disappeared. Be a statue people mistake for stability. "How did you end up here?" I asked. My voice came out polite, the way you talk to strangers who might bill you. She huffed a sound that wasn't laughter. "A friend called. Last-minute friend in need. High-profile date, good money, harmless theater. She didn't tell me the theater was your family's." She looked past me to the doors, as if the building might grow fangs. "I almost walked out. Why didn't you?" "Leah," she said softly, and the name unsettled me. "I saw her in a photo in the lobby. She looked like someone who deserves calm on her wedding day." That caught between my ribs. Of course Emma would say that. She always cared for people in rooms she didn't even enter. It was part mercy, part discipline, one of the 1,000 reasons I felt like a rookie. The coordinator popped back in, breathless. "Positions," she trilled, already retreating. Somewhere inside, the processional stumbled into readiness, the organ feeding the aisle a ribbon of sound. The whisper of gathered bodies reached us, a sea sucking air before a wave. "This is absurd," I said. "It's precise," she corrected. "You'll offer your arm. I'll pretend to be oxygen. We'll glide. Everyone will swallow the story because they want to, and no one will choke." She lifted her chin, practiced. "I know how to play a role. Do you?" The old hurt in me was an untrained animal, already on its hind legs. I tamped it down. "Not yet. Not here." Her eyes flicked to mine, there and gone, like a match struck and pinched. "I learned," she said. On reflex, I looked for the ring finger I used to kiss when I was stupid with gratitude. Bare. It shouldn't have mattered. It mattered. "We can abort," I lied. She nodded at the wall between us and the crowd. "There are a few hundred people who disagree." The doors muffled a swell of music, then the scrape of a microphone, then Leah's laugh, bright and terrified. I pictured her bouquet shaking, my mother mouthing prayers at saints she negotiates like board members, my father pretending to be calm by counting ceiling tiles. The narrative machine was already rolling. If we didn't feed it, it would eat something else. It always does. "Emma," I said, and her name warmed my mouth and scalded it. "This is going to hurt." She smiled without showing teeth. "That's your specialty, isn't it? Paying that photographs well." It was unfair. It was also perfect. I almost told her about the nights that hit like black ice, about the way success sounds when it echoes in an empty apartment, about the drawer where I still keep a concert ticket she forgot in my car. Instead, I did the only thing the moment allowed. I offered my arm. For half a second she looked at it like a cliff edge, then placed her hand where it used to live. Skin over fabric, pulse against bone. The contact was a short, clean shock. A sensation with memory attached. We stood like that, the two of us grafted together by history and emergency. "Alexander," she said softer, "whatever we are right now will be convincing." I turned my head. Her lashes knocked shadows onto her cheeks. "Convincing is the family business." "And mine," she said, a note of defiance under the glass. Through the door seam I could see the aisle as a pale vein, the church a beating body awaiting fresh blood. The coordinator counted down on her fingers. 3, 2, "Ready?" Emma asked, formal, as if we were strangers joining a waltz, as if we hadn't once planned a life in the margins of a grocery list. "No," I said truthfully. She squeezed my arm in old code. I felt it everywhere. The doors began to open, like pouring in like judgment, like a promise I couldn't keep and couldn't refuse. We took one breath together. The corridor contracted to a pinhole. Then nothing existed except the threshold and the fact of us, two actors about to pretend a love we'd already survived, and maybe never had the nerve to finish. The doors swung open, and we stepped inside. A hush rippled through the hall, the kind that gathers before it bursts into whispers. Relatives, friends, investors, all eyes fell on us, and the murmur began like a spark catching fire. Smiles bloomed, applause scattered, people leaned toward one another, whispering about how perfect we looked, how inevitable this seemed. But not everyone moved. At the front table, my mother froze, her hand locked around her glass until her knuckles paled. My father's smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second, his eyes narrowing before he forced his face back into its usual mask. No one else seemed to notice. To the crowd, we were a revelation, a dream couple stepping out of hiding. To them, we were flawless. Emma's hand tightened against mine, her smile dazzling for the cameras, though I felt the tremor in her touch. We walked forward, the picture of elegance, and the room erupted in applause. But even as the noise swallowed us, I could still feel it, the silence where my parents sat. Flashbulbs of phones and cameras didn't stop. Smiles bloomed like wildflowers across faces that had once whispered about me being incapable of love. And Emma, God, Emma, looked every bit the part of the woman destined to stand beside me. Her hair fell in soft waves over the emerald dress that matched her eyes. She smiled for them, dazzling and effortless, though I could see the steel hidden beneath. We walked together, an elegant life stitched by old wounds. I raised her hand to my lips like it was second nature. The crowd gasped in approval. I thought my heart might split in two. Alexander, Aunt Claire gushed, sweeping in like a hurricane of perfume. Finally, you bring us a jewel. What a beauty! What a couple! I tightened my arm around Emma's waist. She leaned into me, her body warm against mine, and whispered through her smile, You're enjoying this, aren't you? My laugh was polite, convincing, though my throat was raw. Not a second of it, I murmured back. The line of guests seemed endless. Relatives, business allies, strangers who treated weddings like networking galas. They clasped my shoulder, kissed Emma's cheek, called us a dream pair. And we let them. Hand in hand, cheek to cheek, we played lovers resurrected from thin air. Every congratulation landed like salt on old scars. Engaged in secret? How romantic! A cousin squealed. Emma's eyes flicked to mine, sharp as a blade beneath her practiced smile. Yes! Some things are worth keeping private. The words pierced me, because they carried more truth than anyone around us could guess. When the music swelled, we moved to the center of the room. It wasn't a dance yet, just a performance of unity. My palm pressed against the curve of her back, and my body betrayed me. Memory rushed in. I remembered the scent of her skin on a summer night years ago, the way she once leaned against me on a quiet balcony, and whispered dreams she swore no one else would ever hear. And here we were, playing strangers who pretended to be lovers, though once we had been the opposite, lovers who had pretended we could be strangers. Smile wider, Emma muttered, her lips brushing my cheek as if she'd kissed it. So I did. I smiled until my jaw ached, until I felt the mask of the perfect fiancé fit so tightly that the man beneath it could barely breathe. But the audience loved it. The family sighed, women dabbed their eyes, men clapped my back with approval. For them, this was a storybook moment, a fairy tale that had been long overdue. Only Emma and I knew the truth, that every laugh, every tender glance, every stolen touch was forged in fire. To them, we were flawless. To us, we were bleeding behind glass. And the cruelest part? For one dangerous moment, with her hand still locked in mine, I wished the performance was real. The dinner began with silver trays and crystal glasses, but the table might as well have been an arena. Laughter ricocheted off the chandeliers, forks chimed like small bells, and every cousin, investor, and family friend leaned just a little too close to catch a glimpse of the miracle. Alexander Hale in love. Emma sat at my side, the perfect accomplice. Her smile never faltered, though I could feel the rigidity in her posture, the subtle tension in the hand resting on the table just inches from mine. We looked like devotion itself, two people bound by something fierce and tender. But beneath the surface, every word we exchanged was sharp enough to draw blood. You haven't changed, I murmured as I passed her the breadbasket, my voice low enough for only her to hear. Still smiling while you sharpen the knife. She took a piece of bread, her fingers brushing mine deliberately, so convincingly tender that the guests across from us actually sighed. And you, she whispered back, still pretending control, when all you've ever done is lose what matters most. My jaw clenched, but my smile held. To the cousins across the table, it must have looked like the intimate banter of lovers. If only they could have heard the venom in it. At one point, my uncle raised his glass. To Alexander and Emma. Proof that even steel can melt. The table erupted in cheers, champagne flutes clinking. Emma leaned closer, her lips grazing my ear as if she were whispering sweet nothing. They think you're human tonight. You should thank me. Her breath scorched against my skin. I swallowed hard, every nerve in me screaming with the memory of how that closeness once felt, how it used to be salvation instead of torture. I turned my head slightly, enough that my words fell like poisoned sugar. And you should thank me for not telling them why you really left. Her fingers tightened on the stem of her glass, just barely. Then, like the consummate actress she was, she tilted her head and laughed, the sound bright and ringing, as if I had whispered something romantic. The guests chuckled along, charmed. But her eyes promised retribution. The first dance after dinner was my sister's with her new husband. The second was ours. The crowd parted, expectant. Emma placed her hand in mine, and I led her onto the polished floor. To the watching eyes, we glided effortlessly, every movement synchronized, a pair meant to be. But beneath the music, the truth pulsed. "You're cruel," she murmured, her gaze locked on mine as I turned her beneath the lights. "You vanished," I shot back, pulling her close, too close. "Cruel is coming second to a ghost." Her nails dug into my shoulder through the fabric of my suit, invisible to everyone else. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Then enlighten me," I said, spinning her outward before catching her hand again, my grip unyielding. "Tell me why I spent years trying to unlearn your name." For a moment, her mask slipped. Just a flicker. Pain darted across her face, raw and unhidden. But then the orchestra swelled, and she was back, the immaculate fiancée, the woman every guest admired. When the song ended, applause thundered. She dipped in a flawless curtsy, and I bowed, my arms steady around her waist. From the outside, we were luminous, invincible. But as we walked back to the table, her whisper sliced through the applause. "Careful, Alexander. You might bleed through your mask." I tightened my arm around her, smiling for the cameras. "So might you, Emma. So might you." The night went on in bursts of champagne and speeches, but for me, the world had narrowed to the war waged in every shared glance, every brush of her hand against mine. To everyone else, we were a fairy tale unfolding. To us, it was a battlefield disguised as love. And neither of us was willing to surrender first. The ballroom felt like a furnace of expectation, and I was suffocating inside it. Every toast, every laugh, every glass raised in our honor was another weight pressing on my chest. I could play this game forever if I had to. I've built empires out of facades. But the real problem sat beside me in an emerald dress, and I couldn't breathe with her so close. It wasn't until the dance floor filled with couples, and the lights dimmed to a soft golden glow that I finally had the chance. I caught Emma's wrist, subtle, almost tender to onlookers, and guided her toward the side hall. She didn't protest. She didn't have to. The moment the music dulled behind the heavy doors, I felt the air change. Silence at last. Except it wasn't silence. It was every unsaid word screaming in the space between us. She turned first, her expression sharp, as if she'd been waiting for this moment all night. "Go on," she said, voice low, brittle. "Say it. I can see it burning a hole in you." I didn't hesitate. "Why did you leave me?" Her mouth opened, then closed, her chest rising and falling fast. "You think it was that simple?" "You disappeared," I snapped. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone. Do you know what it's like to look for someone in every street, every crowd, every damn headline, and never find them? She flinched, but her voice hardened. Do you know what it's like to have no choice? The words landed like a slap. I stared at her, searching her face for cracks in the armor. No choice? You loved me. I know you did. And one day you just vanished. Don't rewrite history to make yourself innocent. Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. You think I wanted that? You think I didn't die every day walking away from you? She stepped closer, her hand trembling as she jabbed it against my chest. They made me. Your father. Your family. They gave me one option, disappear, or watch you lose everything. The floor tilted under me. My father? Her breath shook, and she nodded. He came to me. Said you had no future if you stayed with me. Said I'd ruin you. That your company, your family name, your empire. They'd burn it all down if I didn't leave. I felt the blood drain from my face. My father, the man who lectures me about duty, loyalty, control, had orchestrated my devastation. Emma's voice cracked. I wanted to tell you. God, I tried. But he promised he'd destroy you if I did. So I left. I became the villain in your story, so you could keep everything. The corridor swayed around us, shadows pooling like conspirators. I tried to speak, but the words strangled in my throat. My mind replayed the years of bitterness, the nights I cursed her name, the walls I built higher and higher until I became the man they said I was, cold, unlovable. All because of a truth buried under silence. You should have trusted me, I whispered finally. Tears spilled over her lashes. And watched your life crumble because of me. I couldn't. I loved you too much. It should have broken me, hearing that. Instead, it ignited something raw and dangerous in my chest. Rage, not at her, but at the years stolen, the lies that rotted the foundation of everything I thought I knew. I stepped back, raking a hand through my hair, the weight of revelation crushing and liberating all at once. He thought he could erase you, I muttered, more to myself than to her. He thought he could decide who I get to love. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. And you believed him. You believed I betrayed you. The accusation was deserved. It gutted me. I had spent years convincing myself she was the villain, because hating her was easier than admitting how much I missed her. I looked at her then, not the flawless fiancée everyone in that ballroom adored, but the woman who had carried a burden too heavy for anyone alone. And for the first time in years, the walls between us trembled. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us moved. But in the silence, the past returned with brutal force, and I knew nothing between us could ever go back to pretending. The ballroom pulsed with champagne laughter and violin strings. But after what Emma had confessed in that shadowed corridor, every note scraped like glass. My head was still reeling, blood pounding against the betrayal of my own father, when a sharp murmur cut through the din. They don't look right. I heard it behind me as we re-entered the hall, a guest whispering to another. Too stiff. Too rehearsed. And just like that, the rumor machine stirred, eager to devour us. My sister's wedding, her fragile happiness, would drown in scandal if Emma and I didn't restore the illusion. The master of ceremonies, oblivious, lifted his microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, a toast from our radiant couple-to-be. The spotlight burned down on us. Glasses rose in anticipation. Emma froze beside me, her lips parted but no sound escaping. My throat locked. We hadn't planned this, because nothing about us had ever been scripted. I felt her fingers twitch against mine, a plea or a dare. Maybe both. I stood, raised my glass, and smiled the way I do in boardrooms when the deal is already bleeding out. It's funny, I began, my voice carrying too smoothly, how love can feel like both an old story and a brand new one. The guests leaned in. Emma's eyes locked on mine, warning, begging. But something in me had snapped free of the chains my family had forged. I turned toward her. This woman, my throat caught, but I forced it out raw. She was my first love, the one I lost. And somehow, tonight, I've found her again. Gasps rippled across the hall. My mother stiffened in her seat. My father's jaw was stone. I didn't care. Emma's eyes burned, tears she was fighting to hide under lashes. She lifted her glass, her voice soft but steady. And sometimes the hardest part of love is not losing it, but surviving it. Silence. A heavy, aching silence. Then, applause. Not polite, not restrained. Real. Thunderous. Guests clapped, whistled, some even stood, convinced they'd witnessed a moment too intimate to be fake. I reached for Emma's hand. She let me take it. To everyone watching, it was tenderness incarnate. To us, it was a fragile truce drawn in fire. The music swelled, and the MC, glowing with the success of the moment, shouted, "And now, the couple's dance." We were pulled to the center again, under chandeliers that seemed suddenly merciless. The orchestra struck up something soft, romantic. I slid my hand to her waist, and this time, when she placed her palm against my chest, I felt her heartbeat crashing against mine. "Alexander," she whispered, barely moving her lips. "That toast you shouldn't have." "Yes," I breathed, pulling her closer. "I should have years ago." Her eyes shone. Pain. Fear. Longing. She tried to turn her face away, but I caught her gaze. For one suspended moment, our masks shattered, not for them, but for each other. And what slipped out in that fragile second wasn't a lie, wasn't a role, wasn't survival. It was tenderness. Naked. Terrifying. The crowd, drunk on spectacle, roared with approval, blind to the truth pulsing between us. They thought it was all part of the performance. But Emma and I knew. For the first time all night, the act had become real. Here's a rewritten part 7, The Mask Shatters, with a heated confrontation between Alexander and his parents. The logic is tighter, the drama sharper, and it builds perfectly toward an explosive finale. The ballroom was hollow when the last guests left. Only the faint echo of laughter clung to the chandeliers. Emma had slipped away into the night, her emerald dress vanishing like a ghost. She didn't even look back. I should have gone after her. Instead, I turned toward the far end of the room where my parents stood waiting, statues carved from pride and ice. My mother's pearls glimmered faintly in the low light. My father's hands rested on the back of a chair, rigid, as if even the furniture obeyed him. They didn't speak. They were waiting for me. I crossed the floor slowly, my shoes loud against marble. For once, I didn't bother with masks. "You knew," I said. My voice carried through the empty hall. "The second you saw her, you knew. And you froze." Neither denied it. My father finally lifted his gaze, steel meeting mine. "We were surprised. That's all." "Surprised?" I laughed bitterly. "You destroyed us years ago. And tonight, you dragged her back into this house like a pawn. Was that your plan? Watch us bleed all over again." My mother flinched at my tone, but kept her mask. "Alexander, please. Not everything needs to be turned into melodrama. We acted in your best interest." "My best interest?" The words tore out of me. "You call shattering the only thing I've ever loved my best interest?" Silence. And then the slip. "She was never right for you," my father said, his voice like a verdict. "That girl would have ruined your future. She was weak. She didn't belong in our world." There it was. The truth, naked at last. Rage thundered in my chest. "So you made sure she disappeared. You decided for me. You took years of my life and buried them because she didn't fit your idea of a suitable match." My mother's voice cracked. "We wanted to protect you." "Protect me?" My fists clenched. "You didn't protect me. You crippled me. You turned me into the man they all whisper about, cold, unlovable. And maybe they were right, because I let you do it. I let you make me believe she betrayed me." The silence that followed was suffocating. My father's jaw tightened, but for once he had no words. I stepped closer until I stood eye to eye with him. "You've controlled this family for decades. Every deal, every alliance, every secret. But not me. Not anymore." My mother reached for me, her hand trembling. "Alexander." I pulled back. "If I lose her again, it won't be because of you. It'll be because she chooses to walk away. And if that happens, you'll have the satisfaction of knowing you won, You finally made me alone. But hear me clearly. I will never forgive you for what you did. Never. Their faces blurred in the dim light, my mother's mask cracking, my father's fury simmering behind his silence. But I didn't wait for a reply. I turned on my heel and walked out of the ballroom. Emma was gone, swallowed by the night. But this time, I wasn't going to let her stay gone. Here's the final part. Resolution. Following your plan with cinematic intimacy and emotional payoff. Around 3,500 characters. The night air carried the chill of endings. I'd left my parents in the wreckage of their silence, their empire trembling under the weight of truth they'd rather die than admit. But none of it mattered if she was gone. The city blurred as I drove, every red light a torment. My hands clenched the wheel until my knuckles ached, until the thought of losing her burned hotter than anything my father could throw at me. By the time I reached the station, the platform hummed with echoes, the hiss of trains, the murmur of strangers drifting toward other lives. And there she was. Emma stood alone at the edge, suitcase upright at her side, shoulders squared against the world. Her hair caught the dull glow of the lamps, and in that moment, she looked like a painting of departure, framed by shadows and smoke. She didn't see me at first. I watched her, the way her breath trembled in the cold, the way her hand tightened on the suitcase handle, as if bracing herself to vanish. When she finally turned, her eyes found mine. The storm was still there, the one I'd lived in for years. It almost broke me. I didn't waste time. I didn't have time. I closed the distance between us, my voice steady, stripped bare of every mask I had ever worn. Let them choke on their empire, I said. I'd rather start from nothing with you than live one more day without you. The words hung in the air, raw, irreversible. For a heartbeat, she didn't move. The station noise fell away, the world suspended between her silence and my desperation. Then her breath shuddered out. Her fingers trembled. And slowly, like dawn breaking through a storm, she reached for me. Her hand slid into mine, fragile and fierce all at once. I held it as if I'd never let go again. The suitcase stayed behind. The trains came and went. But we didn't look back. We walked forward together, past the station lights, past the shadows of the Hale legacy, into the unknown. No applause. No cameras. No witnesses. Just us. And for the first time in years, it wasn't an act. It wasn't a mask. It was real. The empire might crumble behind me, the family name might rot with its secrets, but none of that mattered. Because the final image wasn't power collapsing or enemies gasping. It was only this: Emma's hand in mine, two people finally choosing each other, stepping into a future neither of us had dared to believe in until now.